I'm focused on this theory cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the results from the Canadian election. The Liberals have won another straight term, and it's pretty remarkable. It's not too long ago, the Conservatives had like a 20-point lead, and so many people were complaining about Canada and where they're at and how expensive it is to get a home and all kinds of different issues. And it's very clear that they needed change, but they got rid of Trudeau. Some people are like, oh, that's really the reason, or Pierre wasn't a great candidate or whatever. I even Trump, like, listen to me, guys, even Trump seems to believe that he had something to do with the election and the Liberals taking the win, Mark Carney taking the win. So we'll be talking about that. There was Trump spoke about it, where he was asked about it in an interview with Jeffrey Goldberg. I don't know why he took the interview. Very strange to me, but he did take it. And I did read the whole thing. Not any really bombshells in the interview. There's some interesting pieces, but we'll get to. But they did talk about Canada. They did talk about tariffs. They even talked about the 2020 election. I'm like, just let it go. Just let it go, please. But we'll talk about Canada. We will be also talking about Amazon. There was a story that came out that Amazon was going to start listing their prices going up as the result of tariffs on their main website, and the White House blasted them. Now, Amazon apparently denies that was never going to be a thing, and that was like for some smaller site that they maybe that some people talked about, but that was not a thing that Amazon itself was going to do. And it's just more, it's interesting, the rhetoric surrounding the tariffs, because you don't, they're very good, but you don't want the people to be aware of how it's impacting them. Like, okay, well, lots of things to say. Lots of things to say on today and more. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content, the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website. It does cost a stream, run my site, all the good stuff you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it and appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that's available at the website as well. So I encourage you guys to check that out. You guys can also check out different books that I've written that are available on Amazon. There's a link in the description. It'll take you to some of my books that you guys can check out. So I encourage you guys to do that. I have 18 altogether, and most of them are fiction, but I have 2 nonfiction books. One of them is Slayer Fear, which I think I already showed you guys that one. And my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. So I encourage you guys to go ahead and pick those up on paperback, ebook, and some of them are available on Kindle Unlimited if you have that subscription. All my fiction books are available through that. I will be at Motor City Comic Con, which is May the 16th, I think, through the 18th. So about to have a busy time. For me, I'll have some days off then, because I can't possibly do both, like stream, and I'll be at the convention center like all day, all day, from the morning to the evening. I barely ever leave my booth. A couple different cons, I didn't even walk around the con. I just basically stayed there, got up to eat and pee, and that was about it. But last time I did get a chance to walk around, my sister just covered for my booth or whatever. So I'm sure maybe I'll get a little bit of time to do that. But it should be a fun time if you're in that area. Come and see me. Thank you to those of you in the chat. I see Kit Kat. I'll catch you later. Those of you who watched live, thank you. Those of you who watch back later, I very much appreciate you all. Okay, so I think that's all my announcements and so on. Except I didn't play my intro again. Again, I didn't fix it yet. And it's just I haven't decided if I'm going to completely make it all from scratch again or if I'm going to just like overlay some things that I don't like. There's some folks in it that I took pictures with or this in the intro that I'm not crazy about them being on my things anymore. So I just want to swap some stuff out. So that's just why I didn't play my intro today and play it yesterday. So I'll try to have it fixed tomorrow. If you're like, you're throwing off the whole vibe, I'm sorry. But some of you come in late anyway, so you don't even know that the intro is not there. Anyway, Canada had a big election. And before anyone starts pointing any fingers at anyone that lives in the United States of America, Canadians, it's on them to pick who's good for them or who they want to pick. They might necessarily be good for them, but they picked who they picked. I am not Canadian. I don't live there. I've never been a citizen there. I haven't actually been to Canada that much. I've been a few times, but it's just a few, I guess. Not a lot. My dad's gone up quite a bit for ministering in different like reservations and stuff. But I've gone to different. I've gone through Canada to get to New York, the like upper parts of New York and stuff. Gone to like some like Niagara Falls and stuff. Went to some kind of concert conference things. That was a long time ago. I've never been to any of the reserves where my dad is ministered at. I was too little when he like went on the trip where he took my older siblings. And I think I had the chicken pox too. And he's gone back many times, but I've just never been. So I've been to Canada. I just didn't go on those particular trips. So I haven't been a lot. But anyway, I'm not a Canadian voter. They get to pick who's their leadership. So we can see that Trump has had an impact, I would say, and he admits that he had an impact. For anyone out there saying it wasn't his fault, Trump has acknowledged that he noticed like, oh, I started talking about these things and they were up 20 points and it kind of went down from there. He seems to have that bit of self-awareness, why he kept on with the 51st joke and so on. I don't know. I've already voiced that I don't like the idea of Canada being a 51st state, and I assume it's a joke. And I still don't like the joke. But Trump is still keeping on with the bit, even said something like this week about it. I don't love it. I don't love it. But they let their emotions dictate whatever, and the results are what the results are. Oh, we got a Canadian in the comments. I'm Canadian. I'm sick of the results. Never have I considered moving to the US until this. Well, I love the US. Why wouldn't you come here? I've seen someone an artist that I follow. Gosh, what's his name? He does. I can't think of his name. Said that, hey, there's a lot of Marxists here in America and there's a lot of, freedom lovers in Canada. He's like, I have a great idea, just meaning that we should just swap all of our lefties for their conservatives, and we'd have a better countries. Well, we'd have a better country. They could just live with the results of their consequences. But there's people in the comments like, no, we can't just send all of our conservatives away. We need some of them to fight. And I thought you guys are gonna be able to pull it out. I've had fun watching Pierre's, interviews. I'm the one with him eating an apple, talking to the press. Is iconic. I thought he handled the media very well. I thought he was a good leader for the conservatives. At least from, I'm obviously not into Canadian politics anywhere near the amount as I am with U.S. politics, from I guess a casual outside observer. He seemed to have a good message, a good plan as far as getting house prices down. Even when Trump started pushing the tariffs, Pierre's like, okay, we need to push back on Trump and all that stuff too. But he highlighted an issue within Canada about how it's difficult to even trade among the different provinces, and started highlighting real life stories in Canada about there's one, I covered the details at the time, but there was someone who was trying to get beer from somewhere else, and it was just like astronomical, like how just trying to move it. So he tried to come up with a different solution for the Canadians, looking at like an internal critique about how their own government is run, to make Canada itself more independent and better. And at the end of the day, from what I've seen with different exit polling and so on, it really became about who can fight Trump, who's going to take the fight to him and handle him. And even in Carney's like victory speech, he's saying that Trump will never break us. So that's his message. We're going to fight Trump. And I don't think it's unique, like the hatred to Trump with the Canadians. They didn't like other Republican presidents that we have, and they seem to enjoy our liberal ones. They loved Obama and so on. I don't know how much they like Joe, but of course they loved Obama. And Obama had to go up and save Trudeau's butt after the blackface incident, multiple blackface incidents. But they were saved by a couple things. I mean, Trudeau dropping out and getting replaced, so they didn't have all that failure. And Trudeau was the face of a lot of failure and corruption and tyranny, like especially with the COVID stuff. And he decided to step aside. And him stepping aside, I guess early enough, with those switcheroo, gave them enough time. But I don't think that was maybe even enough time. But it was it worked out for them. So I wonder how many Democrats might be asking, if only Joe Biden had stepped out earlier, could Kamala Harris have won? Somebody could have won. I don't know if it was Kamala Harris. Maybe not Kamala, but somebody else. She had enough time. People just didn't like her. Okay? But if they had somebody else who is a different replacement to Joe, and he had like not ran or had just dropped out maybe earlier in the year, well, I think by convention they did replace him, but it was like pre the debate and just before the primaries or whatever, just some point in time. If he had given someone else more time, so the Democrats could have decided, somebody else to take the reins, they maybe could have won the election. They would have had to come up. They would have to establish themselves different from Joe, because people were upset with Joe in the economy and all sorts of things. So they'd have to fight Trump and still distance themselves while being respectful to the Democrat Party and so on. So there was all kinds of ways they'd have to juggle it. But could Kamala Harris have won if Joe had dropped out earlier? No. No. If he had resigned from the presidency and she was the president for a while, that could have maybe changed some things, especially if she decided to be a moderate president, for a year or so, and make, people warm up to her, a little comfortable, and not feel like, she was going to be exactly the person that she was when she ran in 2020. Maybe she would have had a better chance, but Trudeau dropped out, Carney took over, and Trump started on with the tariff war with Canada. But it wasn't just the tariffs, it was also calling them the 51st state, saying that they need to become the 51st state. And Canadians didn't like it. And frankly, I don't like it. I don't like it. And he was asked about it. He was asked about it in his interview with Goldberg. So let me pull that up real quick. And it's so bizarre. Let me read his tweet from the other day, and then I'll read what he said to Goldberg. I am still confused why he did an interview with Goldberg. If you're not familiar with Goldberg, Jeffrey Goldberg is the one who wrote the Losers and Suckers story. So there wasn't any, like, I mean, I don't know. There wasn't a video interview, at least not that I saw. I read it all. So I don't know what the energy was really like in the room or what could have happened before or after. But from what's transcribed, there wasn't anything really crazy. But I think Goldberg wants access, and people know if Trump feels like, I don't know, if you're not like overly hostile to him, and maybe even flatter him sometimes, you know, you're going to get some more access to him. So if he went in there guns a-blazing, I mean, he is the president of the United States. You don't just go acting a fool when you're in front of the president of the United States. But if you get more, you know, attracting what flies with honey, you know, rather than vinegar or whatever the saying is. So I think maybe that's what it was a bit. But they did write such crazy pieces like the Losers and Suckers thing, you know? So I just probably wouldn't have sat down, but whatever. He said the other day, good luck to the great people of Canada. Elect the man who has the strength and wisdom to cut your taxes in half, increase your military power for free to the highest level of the world, to have your car, steel, aluminum, lumber, energy, and all the other businesses quadruple in size with zero tariffs or taxes. If Canada becomes the cherished 51st state of the United States of America, no more artificially drawn line from many, many years ago. Look how beautiful this landmass would be. Free access, no border, all positives with no negatives. It was meant to be. America can no longer subsidize Canada with the hundreds of billions of dollars a year that we have spending in the past. It makes no sense unless Canada is a state. So, not cheering on for the conservative there is just still trolling, saying, hey, essentially elect me or elect to leave Canada and just join us. I don't want that to happen. And again, I think he's trolling. But it would be a huge liberal state. It would be a huge Democratic state. And I don't know what off the top of my head what the full population is, but like why would we want that many people added on who would just vote for the Democrats? Why would we want that? Why would we want that? It doesn't make any sense. So and that's what Goldberg pointed out. And he said they have socialized medicine. Like, I know that's going to be a lot of Democrats. So here we go. So this conversation started. Trump had said something like, he mentioned how he was good on foreign policy and that the building foreign relations. And he said, I don't think Canada would say that. And so he started ranting a bit. And so Goldberg said, you seriously want them to become a state? And Trump said, I think it would be great. Heck of a big Democratic state. A lot of people say that, but I'm okay with it if it has to be. Because I think, you know, actually, until I came along, I'm no political genius, Goldberg said, but I know which way they're going to vote. They have socialized medicine. Trump said, you know, until I came along, remember that the conservative was leading by 25 points. And someone else said, it's true. And then Trump said, then I was disliked by enough of the Canadians that I've thrown the election into a close call, right? I don't even know if it's close call, but the Conservative, they didn't like Governor Trudeau too much. And I would call him Governor Trudeau, and he wasn't fond of that. So I know he's still trolling Canada, but this wasn't strategic trolling. It was, I mean, I made him feel good to tweet it. Sometimes I call it the meme-istration. You can't always be a meme. Sometimes you have to think bigger. Sometimes you have to make the right political moves and do things that are in the best interest of not just your country, but the one above us, you know. I think working with the Conservatives would have been much easier for us. And now you have someone who is promising to take it to Trump. Like, that's a campaign promise. Carney sounds no different than the Democrats. You know, Gavin Newsom is trying to play moderate, but you know, AOC and other folks like that promising like we're gonna take it to Trump or so I just don't think that's good. I just don't think that's good. I and you guys know I'm not a fan of the tariff stuff anyway, but the tariff stuff and the 51st state thing, and I know it's trolling, and I hope they know that it's trolling, but it still ticks them off. You're talking about dissing the sovereignty of a nation. What, like, why wouldn't they be upset about that? And then Trump's like, we're losing so much money, we're subsidizing them, and so on. Like, he still has it in his mind about these trade deficits. And just because you have a deficit doesn't necessarily mean that something bad is happening. Like, maybe just someone has more purchasing power. So they could have negotiated other things without going to like taking it on a scale of 1 to 10. You go into like 100 so fast. And the thing about him being upset about Mexico and Canada, did he not negotiate new trade deals with them in his last presidency? So I don't know. Maybe he was playing hardball because those things are about to expire, and it's time to like set up. He wants some new stuff going on that he thinks are more beneficial to the U.S., but you can't be like, oh, everything just sucks and we're getting screwed when you negotiated the thing the last time. So it's not like NAFTA is still in place. Someone said Mark Carney is a wimp. You know, if they orient a lot, I just feel like if the Conservatives were in place, they'd have incentive to want to work with each other, to maybe box out people we don't care for, like China. And I don't know, maybe the liberals are so eager to stick it to Trump that they partner and go in other places instead of working with the US. Oh, excuse me. I have got a tickle in my throat. So I'm sad for Canada, man. I was pulling for the Conservatives. I was, but there was such a drastic shift. There are people who are saying that Pierre was a terrible candidate. You got Peter Bet-David talking about how he didn't go on Theo Von show and my show. Let me read his comment. Like, I really don't think him not going on podcasts is what tanked the election for the Conservatives. And by the way, he lost his seat, so he's not even going to be in the parliament. This is Peter Bet-David. I certainly hope your candidate, Pierre Poilievre, did everything in his power to win for you. I hope you held him accountable. I hope you drove him to earn his victory instead of being entitled to one. I wasn't in Canada. To me, it seemed like he was out there trying to do stuff and taking interviews and so on. And people are saying he worked really hard, going different places. What David is saying is he's upset that he didn't go on his podcast and other people's podcasts. I hope he and his team reached out to Tucker, Nilkt, Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Megyn Kelly, Sean Ryan, Bill Maher, Lex Friedman, and others to get his message heard. I certainly hope your fear of the liberal media in Canada didn't bully you from campaigning the old-fashioned way. I hope this doesn't become the most embarrassing loss a conservative candidate has suffered following a disastrous Trudeau administration. If he loses to Carney after being ahead by a mile on Polymarket just 90 days ago, this may go down as the most pathetic loss of all time. Your beautiful country and amazing people needed their hero to work his bleep off. I'm not sure he did. I certainly hope I'm wrong and he wins, but future looks bright for those who campaign like their countries counted on them. Some of these names, like Tucker has had some crazy folks on his stuff as of late. Like I just wouldn't want to be rushing to Tucker and these folks, of course, have Joe Rogan's biggest podcast in the world. Of course, Theo Vaughn has a big reach, and so does the Nilk Boys and so on, and some of these other folks. But I just don't think that Pierre lost because he didn't go on Bill Maher's couch while Bill Maher did marijuana and drank. I just don't think that's why he lost, and going on those programs wouldn't have been the thing that turned him around. Now there's some people saying that Pierre lost because he started to criticize Trump, go after Trump, and that he wasn't conservative enough. Canada is not a conservative place. Like Goldberg said, like they have socialized medicine. Like they're like euthanizing people. Like it's not a conservative place. There are conservatives there, and passionate and competent conservatives who will fight, but there's a lot of lefties in Canada, and I don't know what all the totals and stuff are, but they're not like crazy numbers that the liberals won, but the conservatives had a good showing, but there were other smaller parties that decided to turn toward Carney that helped the liberal vote out. So I just don't think going on Tucker Carlson is what would have saved this election, especially as Trump started turning the momentum. Things started changing when he started talking about the tariffs. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. I wonder if there's any more Canadians in watching. I mean, you can let me know what was kind of the feeling on the ground and stuff, but Guy Benson tweeted this out. The blue line is where Pierre Poilievre's conservatives were in the Canadian polls for the last 16 months, dominant. Oh, say, can you see the moment when Trump started talking about annexing Canada and punitive tariffs, which the failing liberals' red line made central to their campaign? Yeah. You can see the decline and you can see the jump. There might have just been a lot of liberals who who were angry, who weren't going to vote. Sometimes you win just because the other side is not motivated to back their people. That happens in Michigan, because we are purple, kind of blue. I mean, pretty much a blue state, but there are instances but you can still get a Republican governor here or there. Just it kind of depends on the turnout. If it's high, usually we're not gonna have a great day. And I don't know how much that has I don't think that's really changed so much. But yeah, my heart goes out to Canada. Pierre, man, it sucks to be him. It sure sucks to be him. And he was put in a difficult situation. People were already trying to there's a lot of, I don't know, Trump sycophants who are coming and attacking Pierre. They loved him like a while ago. and now they're saying he blew it because he decided to come at Trump and et cetera, or he was so flawed. People were upset when you start talking about the economy, messing with people's money, insulting their country. Like, when people are going and booing the national anthem, our national anthem at games, do you think that's just they'll get over it? They were upset about our policies. And I saw so many Canadians saying that they felt betrayed. Like, I thought we were friends and you guys are doing this punitive tariffs. They felt betrayed. So they did get in their feels because the Liberals are the ones who created the state of Canada as it is now, and people aren't happy about it. But at the same time, Trump was doing things or promising to do things that would make things considerably worse. And they do need someone who's going to figure out a way to either take it to him or work around him some kind of way, or to stop it. And the Liberals were promising to do that. So they got their win. They got their win. And it sucks. It sucks. Anyway, another thing that's going on, still talking about tariffs. Amazon, there's a story that broke out that Amazon was going to start listing prices on their website of how they've changed because of impacts due to tariffs. And that, just FYI, apparently that is not true. There was like a like lower site or something from within Amazon that thought about it. People bring up ideas all the time or whatever, but Amazon is saying they're denying it. They're denying it, that was a thing, especially on their main Amazon website, that was what they were planning to do. But the White House was asked about it, and they were upset. They were upset about it, and they blasted Amazon. And I think this is before Amazon denied the report.
It was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect, crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this, since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise, because as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
It was reported this.
So this isn't true. And I wonder why she was like, I'm going to take this because I just talked to Trump and he just got off the phone with Amazon. I would assume Amazon told him it wasn't true. So, what's with the hostility here? Because if they just got off the phone, I'm assuming Amazon wasn't like, yeah, they deny that was the case. So what was the conversation Amazon had with Trump? So I guess my question is, how is it propaganda about the tariffs and the cost it is to consumers if it's just the truth? If the prices are going up because of the tariffs, listing the difference in cost with inflation, like, first of all, the inflation that we suffered and the different issues with the economy, it was like astronomically high under Biden. But a lot of our financial woes, they're not solely on Biden and the Democrats. You know, there were supply chains and other things that were disrupted and broken throughout the age of COVID, and too much money that we printed and spent during that time. And that was also in Trump's term as well. So there's blame that can go around to more than one person when it comes to that. But I think we all know pretty much what we were paying before and how much it is now. But Biden did do tariffs too, not like this broadly or punitive in the way that Trump, is using them now. And Trump did use tariffs before, but they were more strategic and before used a lot as some kind of negotiating tactic. And that's why I guess when Trump talked a lot about using tariffs, people assumed that it was a negotiation tactic. And that's how he would just like strategically kind of use them. But no, he like genuinely believes that deficits are bad, and that the U.S. is being ripped off when we have a trade deficit. So people have had some interesting takes to this, like Charles Payne from Fox said, I wonder if Amazon will also explain to the American people why its profit margin must increase every single year and how much Jeff Bezos' $500 million wedding will cost each customer. They are playing a dangerous political game. And someone said, aren't you supposed to be a business journalist? Yeah. So someone said, we've entered the it's greedy capitalists to blame, not government policies portion of the MAGA Bernie Sanders merger. Yeah. So Bezos, Amazon also got a lot of money when we basically transferred so much of our wealth, when we shut down our country, shut down the economy, said only essential places could be open. And a lot of people just started buying online, and Amazon became like crazy, profitable, and Bezos got all this money. So again, if you want to talk about Amazon and profits and all that stuff, there's more than one person we could point the finger at, guys. But look, people get things from all over the place, all over the world when it comes to Amazon that's shipped to them. And a lot of stuff that people get from Amazon are some things that are shipped from China and other places that are outside the US that are going to be impacted by tariffs, whether it's that item itself or a piece that's assembled somewhere to make that thing, or packaging that comes together. We live in a global economy, and there's not a lot of things that I would say, but just by sheer numbers or whatever, I guess you could say there's a lot of things that are just made in the US itself, but a lot of businesses reach out some kind of way, get something from somewhere that wasn't originally here in the US. It's just how our market is. So prices go up because of tariffs, and the White House doesn't like that reality. They have acknowledged it because they'll say things like, we have to like brace for the pain, like, we can do it, and that we're gonna build factories here, we're gonna have more work here, we're gonna buy American, hire American, all this stuff, but that will take time. You're not gonna be able to do every job here anyway, but it's still going to take time. So you're still going to have some issues. Them being so, I don't, if Amazon again isn't doing the thing that was reported that they were going to do, I do feel like it would have been obviously political if they decided to do that. And Jeff Bezos was at the inauguration. He did stop his newspaper from endorsing Kamala Harris. I just, when I first heard it, I'm like, that doesn't sound like they must be really mad about this tariffs if they're thinking about doing that. Like, because that is a huge way to weaponize I guess the truth against the White House. That would have been That would have been a crazy thing for them to do. So I was surprised when I heard it. I'm not surprised to hear that they weren't going to do it. And so her assessment, thinking that it was the case and saying that it's a hostile and political act by Amazon, I don't disagree with that assessment if it were true. Is it warranted? I guess it would depend on your end game. If your end game, if you thought it was more important to try to get the American people to speak out against the tariffs so they will reverse course, then maybe that's worth doing. But I still feel like so many people use Amazon, obviously, from different sides of the aisle, that it's just, to put it on your website would be too blatantly political. You know, I when I was in high school, maybe it was like maybe the 10th grade. I don't know if it was the 10th grade. Could have been a little older, but I was in high school. There was one teacher that I had who was very anti-war. He went to Nam, and he didn't I guess he went to Nam to kind of get away, and ended up very jaded with the world and stuff. But he was big lib, and he would write on the board the amount of casualties from like the wars overseas, because he wanted the students to come and see how many people were dying. And so he admitted, like, it was absolutely political, and he would make his politics known like every chance he could get. And I thought it was unfair how vocal he was. Like, it was very much a class that you kind of it wasn't like full on propaganda, but you might, if you worry about sending your kids to like public schools because the teachers are going to be biased and you just want them to learn and not interject like their worldview, and just kind of teach them how to think and present the evidence and the facts, whatever, he'd be one of those teachers that you wouldn't want your kid to have. It was fine for me because I was very vocal and I was informed, and I would push back on some things that he said. And, there were times where he was respectful for my pushback and stuff. So, there's a lot of kids, obviously, in high school who didn't have those same sort of mentalities. But he knew he was being political, and that's why he wrote the number every day, because he wanted to influence people by seeing the numbers. Now, assuming that those were the correct numbers, he's still using the truth and showing it to people to change their minds or make them aware. And he absolutely had a political agenda behind weaponizing that particular information. It's like the COVID numbers. Like, do you guys remember the death counters that were on TV? How many death counters did you see after Donald Trump was no longer the president? Once he was no longer the president, where they kept going through the numbers all the time, there are like more deaths that would happen under like Biden, and people continued to die. They didn't just stop dying from COVID, or with COVID rather. But they wanted you to feel something when you saw those numbers. They wanted you to feel the dread. They wanted you to be aware of it. So yeah, it would have been a hostile and political act by Amazon to do such a thing. So I'm not surprised that it's not true. But to all of these folks who are supposed to be on the right and capitalist, being upset at whether it's Amazon or small businesses or other companies for pointing out that prices will go up, like, please stop trying to diss companies and capitalist business owners and so on if they raise prices. All these companies are not just going to eat all the costs of these tariffs. The American people are going to feel them. And if you have good reason for putting them in place, then you can go out and make your case to the American people and say, we need to, we're going to feel some pain for a little while, but we can get through it. And this is why, X, Y, and Z. And if we were doing strategic sort of tariffs, here or there, it's not so broad. Like maybe you could make the case, but the Liberation Day, and Trump's continuous talking of the tariffs, and it's just kind of misunderstanding of them. It doesn't make people feel good. And we've talked about the polling. His polling on the economy is in the 30s. And that is going to tank the midterms if there's not some kind of turnaround. Trump is really good for Trump. Trump is really good for Trump. I don't know how well Trump is for everybody else though sometimes. Like he in 2016 there were people who got pulled in with the Trump wave. And we almost got our senator, man. We almost got Mike Rogers in 2024 following that wave. But in the midterms, in Michigan in 2022, that was rough. That was rough. So I don't want what happened with Canada had to happen in our midterms, man. I don't want that to happen. Let me read some of the comments on the economy. There's this is an interview with Jeffrey Goldberg. Here's the economy section. I'm going to also read the section about his comeback because I thought that was kind of fascinating, digging into Trump's mind a little bit. But Cher said, there's talk on Wall Street of what they call a Trump put, meaning that there's a bottom of how far the market will fall, because if we're headed to a recession, you'll change your tariff policy. If we're headed to a de-dollarization and bond interest rates are rising, you're going to change your tariff policy to adjust for that. Is that a fair characterization that you're watching the markets and that you're going to try to protect the American economy? And Trump said, I don't think so. There's more of the answer to that, but I don't think that's true, because Trump's Liberation Day and tariffs and all that stuff, he backed off of them because he was watching the markets and the bond markets and all that stuff. So he does watch for that stuff. And I do think that there is a bottom, and I do think there's folks talking to him. And at the end of the day, he doesn't want everything to just explode under his watch. So I don't think he's like purposely like being deceptive here. I just don't think that's the case when he says, I don't think so. I historically, what we've just witnessed, if the same thing happened, something similar where things are really bad and people around him saying you got to reverse course, or the markets are really bad and taking a nosedive and the bond market, I think he'll back off a bit, like especially if they can get enough wins and say, oh, well, we have X amount of deals, 200 deals, we did what we needed to do, and we can back off of all the tariffs or whatever. I think if he has some kind of out and needs to take the out, he'll take it. That's what I think. But he claimed, I don't think so. So I don't see how I could possibly change, because I saw what was happening. I've been saying this for 35, 40 years. That's true. I've watched this country get ripped off by other nations, and I say friend and foe. And believe me, the friends are in many cases worse than the foe. Look, we lost trillions of dollars last year on trade with this guy. I'm talking about Biden, trillions of dollars, and every year we lose trillions, right? Hundreds of billions, but basically trillions. We went over the ledge to the T word, And I can't imagine it's sustainable to have a country that can lose that much money for years into the future. And I wonder if someone like, if Goldberg or someone like having this conversation would have just philosophically gone into the explaining the deficits and debating trade deficits with him in that moment, like where that conversation would have gone. But he doesn't interrupt and challenge that premise. And anyway, and I felt somebody had to do something about it. And already I have tariffs on cars and, of 25% tariffs on steel, 25% tariffs on aluminum, of 25%. And I have a base tariff of 10% for everybody, for every country, and that'll be changed. And a little bit of a misnomer, I have a lot of negotiations going on, but I don't have to. I do that because I want to see how they're feeling. But I'm like somebody that has a very valuable store and everybody wants to shop in that store, and I have to protect that store, and I set the prices. And we're going to be very rich. We're going to make a lot of money. So I don't think the answer is that it will affect me. It always affects you a little bit, but I don't think, and I certainly, there's no theory, like you say, that if it hits a certain number, I don't know where it is today. How's the stock market? Goldberg said, I didn't track it hour to hour. Trump asked, anybody? No, let's see. Just give me the good news if it's good. And Levitt said, it's up, all green. And Trump said, how much is it up? And Levitt said, Dow is up 419 points. NASDAQ is up. And Trump says, this is a transition period. It's a big transition. I'm resetting the table. I'm resetting a lot of years, not from the beginning. Our country was the most successful in 1850 or so. To think of this from 1870, really, from 1870 to 1913, and it was all tariffs. And then some great genius said, let's go to tax people instead of taxing other countries. We were so successful that the president set up committees, blue ribbon committees, on how to give away the money. We were making so much money, and then we went to an income tax system after that. And by the way, they brought the tariffs back. And after the Depression started, they like to say, oh, tariffs cause. I might as well get that little plug in because of the one thing they say, the tariffs caused the Depression. No, we went into the Depression. We were in there for a while, and they said maybe we could go back to tariffs and save it, but the ship has sailed. I don't know. The economists seem to say that the tariffs made that issue worse back then with the Depression. But as far as the economy, the federal government stuff being funded on tariffs as opposed to income taxes, we don't have those tiny budgets anymore. And Trump is not the one who's going to shrink the size of the government as far as how much money we have. He's not going to be the one to do it. He wants to spend more, like on it was a campaign a campaign promise to fund IVF, and they want to give out money to new mothers, like $5,000, and they want more in child care and this thing, and they don't want to cut Medicaid, they don't want to cut Social Security or make any kind of change to it because they're concerned about what will happen to the electorate. And they're definitely not going to cut in the military funding. There's things they would want to cut as far as DI, and there's things that DOJ has recommended and so on. But we are not going to significantly shrink the amount of money that we send to folks and pay. We're just not. We're just not. So that was his portion on the economy in this interview. I still don't understand why I gave it to Goldberg, but it's not a terrible interview. They talked about the deportations, the due process. They talked about whether he would run in 2008, which I thought that was interesting because Trump was like, no. And then he just carried on the conversation. And then Trump was kind of like, well, like, just take the no. He said no, like, just move on. Y'all want to make a mountain out of a molehill so bad. They talked about retribution. And Trump, I'm not going to read that whole portion, but Goldberg asked about, retribution and so on, and Trump seeking it. And Trump was like, well, there's some people who are like, oh, we need to just move on and make America great. And there's some people who are like, well, all these people did all these terrible things and we need to get them back or whatever. And they can't get away with it. And Trump was like, I'm in the first group. Goldberg is like, I don't think so. I'm like, what do you mean you don't think he's in the first group? That's how he ran his first presidency in his first term. He just was like, oh, we don't need to go after Hillary Clinton. It's literally what happened. But he did admit there's people in his administration that want to seek retribution. So I don't know if that's going to end up opening a can of worms somewhere else. But this is the interesting part I wanted to read to you guys. This is about his comeback when he won. And Parker said, our story is tracking the arc of the remarkable comeback, and not just the comeback. It feels like you are wielding power quite differently now. But my question has to do with January 2021. You're in exile. You're fighting for your political life. Trump said, I don't think of it as that way, but you're right, I guess. There could be some truth to that. And Parker said, when was the first moment when you realized you could return, when you realized that it could happen again? And then Trump said, so I'm a very positive thinker. I was questioning whether or not I would want to come back, but I never thought that I wouldn't be able to. You had Ron DeSantis, who was a hot prospect. People were saying, oh, he's going to do great. And you had on the Democrat side, I guess you had some that were hot. Who knows? I didn't think they were hot. Biden, in my opinion, was a failed president. He let millions and millions of people into the country who shouldn't have been here. It's a tremendous problem. I thought that maybe I wouldn't do it, but I thought if I did do it, I'd win. But I never considered it a comeback. A lot of people call it a comeback. This makes me, don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. I'm thinking about Christopher Sabat, who did the voice of Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. He was asked to sing Mama Gonna Knock You Out. And so that's why I was like, don't call it a comeback. Yeah. Most people, I guess, call it the greatest political comeback in history. I think it's an honor, but I don't view it as a comeback. I just sort of view it as I just keep trudging along. I shouldn't be embarrassed by that word because it's probably accurate. I just didn't view it as a comeback. And Schreier said, when I came to the Oval Office last week as part of the press poll, I asked you a question about the IRS going, well, that's kind of going on to a different category, but yeah, I just thought it was interesting that he does it, that he said, I don't view it as a comeback. Like, I've been here for years. Like, it's like the Mama Gonna Knock You Out song. Yeah, I just found that fascinating. Found that really fascinating. That President Trump felt that way. That he just he's into the power of positive thinking and all that stuff, but he always just knew that he could if that's what he wanted to do. So very fascinating. There's just no kind of doubt in his mind about what he can accomplish if he wanted to accomplish it. And that's how it was when he ran before. Like when he talked to Melania about it, and she's like, if you do run, you're going to win. If you actually decide to do that. And so even when they talked about 2020, Goldberg's like, you want, because Trump's like, I won 3 times. And he's like, well, that's the thing. You won before, you won now. Like, can't you just admit that you didn't win before? And he's like, but I did win, He's like, he's like, it'd be really easy for me to just say that I didn't win, but I did win. So I'm just gonna be truthful. I did win. Like, he just, that's why when people were saying, like, trying to get him on all these charges and saying that he was frauding the people because he didn't actually believe that he won, I saw plenty of evidence of people around him saying things like he didn't win or telling him that he did not win. I did not see any evidence, including when I was reading through the super indictments or whatever that they released, and tried to drop even after it was too late and he had already won. I didn't see evidence that he himself believed, or him admitting that he had absolutely lost. So he's a fascinating guy. He's a very fascinating guy. Someone said, I want a balanced budget. I would love that. I don't see them doing it anytime soon. I think Trump had promised that we were going to we're going to balance the budget and then we're going to get rid of an income tax. I'm like, we're not getting rid of income tax. They're not going to balance the budget. They're not going to balance the budget. They're, and you know what? I was talking to one of my sisters today, and I was telling her a bit about the interview. She's like, why did he do an interview with Goldberg? And why does he? And I was telling her some of the things that he said, in the interview about Canada and other things. And she's just like, I know what I voted for. I know what I voted for. And I know what I voted against too. And so even with all of his flaws, still very glad that you didn't have the Kamala Harris in office. So there will always, there will always be that. But I didn't expect him the first time around to be the one to balance the budget and cut a bunch of spending and stuff. This, he's the one who I've said this more. He pees in golden toilets, and I just didn't expect him to be that guy. And hopefully we will get that person someday. And there is a danger though, because there's a lot of MAGA influencers that will throw I don't know, economic common sense out of the window to do anything to sort of uplift and protect Trump. And I just don't want the populist sort of message and thinking to kind of gel with the Bernie Sanders type of folks to somehow open a door for someone like AOC to one day kind of just swoop in. And that would be terrible. It doesn't have to be her. It could be somebody else kind of with those tendencies that are better at hiding their problematic views. But yeah, again, my heart breaks for Canada. I know that we talked about that at the top of the hour, but just thinking about it again. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content, the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream on my site. All the good stuff you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that's available on the website at blacktnews.com, like different mugs and t-shirts and so on. So you guys can check that stuff out. You guys can check out some of my books that I've written as well. I have 18 altogether. And you guys can find those on Amazon. There's a link in the description that will take you to a page where you can find all that stuff. I do not know if my book prices have been affected by tariffs. I haven't changed them. I guess I have to look at my margin. I haven't got an email about it, so I assume everything's okay. I know they do print them here in the US. So I don't see how things would be impacted, but I haven't gotten an email. I haven't gotten an email about it yet. Anyway, thank you guys, and I will catch you guys tomorrow.